Okay, cycle 2, week 3, science. This experiment is on page 6 of the Van Cleves science book, and it is experiment number 9. It's called see-through. This experiment is going to take a little more preparation, like in class, to get it set up. So I'm going to explain the experiment to you, and then I'll kind of tell you what you guys will have to work with. Sorry, my dog is sitting at my feet. Anyway, so the point of this experiment is to explain how we can see Saturn even through its rings. And it also kind of gives us a talking point on Saturn's rings and what they are made up of. So the experiment calls for scissors, which you don't need because I've already cut all your paper. A ruler, which I will have enough for your kids to work in pairs, so they'll just kind of have to take turns, but it doesn't take very long. White poster board, which you don't need because I've already cut your strips into paper. Your paper into strips. And this is one of the experiments that you'll need to grab a glue stick from your tutor tub before you go to science. So make a big fat note in your foundations guide or wherever you're going to put something before you leave your class to go to science on week 3. Grab a glue stick, or 3 or 4. Grab the container that your glue sticks are in, or whatever, because you'll need your glue sticks when you get to the science table. I'll try to have a couple of extra out, but it would be helpful if the kids were able to have one between every 2 of them. And then the other materials are black marking pens. I have a variety. Some of these Frankie gave us from last year. Some of these I had, some of these I bought. So there's a different variety. There's some fine tipped one. There's big fat ones. It really doesn't matter which ones you use. The thicker the lines, the easier it is to see, but they don't have to be super thick because you'll see in a second. It really doesn't need to be super thick. And then it calls for a straight pen. And it bugs me that this is spelled incorrectly. They don't mean a writing pen. They mean a pin, which is spelled P-I-N. But in the book it says pen, but you don't need a writing pen. You need a pin, like a straight pin. We've got these, I've got thumbtacks and I've got little push pins. Either one will work totally fine. But the experiment, what you're going to have the kids do is there will be 3 strips of paper in the bag for each one of the students, and each one of them needs 3. And then there will also be pencils for each one of the students, and each one of them needs 1 pencil and 3 strips of paper. And then what they're going to do is they are going to, taking turns in their pairs, they're going to use the ruler, and they're going to mark on their strip a 1/2 inch and 1 inch down. So just set the ruler at the top, measure a 1/2 inch and make a mark, measure 1 inch and make a mark on both sides, on both ends of the paper. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your marker and you're just going to fill in that line. I'm using the thickest one. You don't have to use this one. You can use some of the skinnier ones. Actually kind of work a little bit better, but then you just draw your lines straight across on all 3 strips of paper. Then what you're going to do is you're going to try to kind of evenly distribute your X's. I did like an X and then a line through the middle, and that seemed to work pretty well. But you want them to be to where if you were to draw a circle using your lines, you would be able to draw a circle without it being all kind of wonky. But once you get it kind of set up, this is when the glue stick comes in. So you're going to take your glue stick and you're going to glue the center of your little starburst here together. So just put some glue in the very center. By the way, in case you need glue sticks for your home, the Scholastic ones are way better than whatever ones I had, the Elmer ones maybe. I've tried the gel kind. I've tried the craft kind. I've tried all of them. And this works way better and it lasts longer. So word to the wise, if you're buying glue sticks, buy the Scholastic ones because they're cheaper and they work better. Okay, so I've glued my strips together. You might want to hold them for just a second. And I will have enough supplies in here for you as the tutor. If you want to do this ahead of time, you can. If you want to do it with the kids in class so they can kind of see step by step what you're doing, that's totally fine. But there will be an extra set of strips and an extra pencil and thumbtack and all that on the table for you as the tutor so you can work through it with them. And then once you have your strips glued together and your lines are marked, then you're going to take this and you're going to poke a hole through the center. You might want to kind of wiggle it around a little so that it spins pretty easily. If I can even get it through there, just kind of wiggle it. And then you're going to stick that through the end of your pencil. I just bought these cheap pencils, so let's hope the erasers work for this. Fine. And then what you're going to do is you're going to spin it. And so you can see how even though it's made up of individual strips, when I spin it, it looks like a solid ring. And even though when I spin it, try to see my fingers, you can still see my fingers and the pencil, though the strips are spinning. So this kind of speaks to why we can still see Saturn through its rings that are constantly spinning around it. And it also speaks to what Saturn's rings are made up of. They're not solid rings. They're made up of chunks of ice and rock, and they're just kind of held together by gravity. And so both of those are talking points to kind of help us apply this particular science experiment. One thing to note in the instructions on the book, it says to glue the strips together and then draw the lines. My experience has been that it is better to draw the lines first and then glue them, because once they're glued and the kids start trying to mark the lines, that's when the glue might not quite be set enough, and then it'll come apart and then you'll have to re-glue it, whatever. Draw the lines first, then glue, then stick it on the pencil. Some additional questions that you might want to ask to help them, think about what are they observing, or what do they notice, or what do they see? How fast do I have to spin my top to be able to see a solid ring? If I just spin it barely, I kind of get one, but not really. But if I spin it faster, if I spin it super fast, so those are good questions. How does the speed of the movement change what I actually see? Another question, this is kind of a fun one, is just to ask the kids, have you ever tried to follow one blade of your ceiling fan? So you look up at your ceiling fan while it's going, and it looks like it's just this blur. But if you try to focus your eyes on one and follow it, you can see that one for a little bit. I can't ever do it for very long, but this was one thing that the kids asked, or one of the kids mentioned the last time I did cycle 2, and I just never really thought about it. So that's a good question to ask. If we find a ceiling fan in the church, it might be kind of fun to look and do that too. My notes for this one, besides to bring glue sticks from your tutor tubs, is that the Indescribable book has a whole devotion on Saturn's rings, and it's on page 102 if you have that book. And again, if you would like a copy of mine, it's called No Standing on Saturn, and it just talks about what the rings are made of, and the application is that it looks like it's something that you could stand on, but really you can't. And so that's kind of just a neat little biblical application there too. So that is cycle 2, week 3.